All right. Actually, on the topic of automation, I found this is one of those newpreneur.com, clickbait articles, but I thought it'd be a good launching point for some discussion. So, opportunities for automating whilst launching a business. So, it's kind of like the five things they think you should be automating when starting a business. So, one ironically, juxtaposition of the How Not to Develop Your Practice article, social media and content marketing is one of those tasks that people tend to move to the bottom of the to-do list. And so they say if you automate it, it'll be much easier to do that. And you can even purchase content if you so want. Invoicing is one that they say you should automate. Reporting is one that they say you should automate. And I feel like Ty will have probably a thing to say about that. And expense tracking, you should automate with the easy to access expense apps that they have out there that we have experience working with. So I thought I'd get your guys' take if there's something they left off the list that should be there, or maybe something that's on the list that they're way off the mark on for trying to suggest that you should automate it.
Well, it's right on point of what we talked about earlier, the content marketing side, right? This is part of what I think Rosenberg was getting at of just throwing out, if you're a CPA firm, for example, but I think it would apply in any industry, just throwing out a lot of uninteresting content it's hard to imagine how without the human touch, if you're just automating that process, you're not, there's not a human behind it. It's not a personal opinion. It's not a personal expression of what they believe or what they think or of their knowledge or anything like that. If you over automate your content and marketing process, it doesn't seem like it would work, at least not in a professional service environment. Maybe if you're automating for a large brand that isn't intended to be, people aren't as personal, but my guess is that large brands are actually paying what they're paying for the resources to have it be more personal. And it's the smaller businesses that are always trying to kind of do this on the cheap by just like putting something in an automation machine. And don't get me wrong, we automate social media we automate some of our posting processes using popular programs to do that. But like we're actively engaged in determining what those posts are and what goes into it. There's not some random automation that just pulls an article from a third party and throws it into the queue for us. We develop the content and decide what we're going to say and who we're going to tag and all of that in each of the postings that we put out.
Yeah, I've always thought automation was kind of more, I didn't think it was a good candidate for something like social media. I mean, it makes sense to automate the posting activity and whatnot, but if you, like you said, if you try to automate too many things out of that process, then it completely loses the thought that made it interesting. In my career, it's been focused a lot on automation because I've worked with a lot of companies that either make software to help automate things or just people who are very interested in that topic. And so I'm kind of the mindset that if there's anything that you can automate, I think it's a really good practice to get in the habit of doing that. The article comes up with a couple of good topics that I think are good candidates for it and that businesses should consider automating. I want to kind of give a different take, which is to share maybe a more general approach to like, how do you think about whether or not a task is there for automation or is a good candidate for automation? And so there's kind of this popular web series called XKCD, which is like a comic, and it talks about a lot of different like programming concepts. And so I wanted to share this chart, which is basically a decision-making chart used to try to like illustrate how do we look at a process and think about whether or not it makes sense to automate. And so on the one side, you have how much time you're going to save by doing it. And on the other side, you have how often you do the task. And between these two, you kind of look at it and decide, okay, well, these are the things that I think are even candidates to automate. And then when you get into actually automating them, I mean, there's a lot of different tools that you can use that I think are helpful to get in the habit of using. And so there's this book called Automate the Boring Stuff with Python, which is basically just geared at how do we take steps out of our day? How do we look at things that we might not have thought were good candidates for automation and realize that actually these can be, done more efficiently because there's such a wide spectrum of what can be automated. So I know that like in my career, Excel and VBA and AutoHotkey and all these other softwares have been great for automating. But I work at a company that, automates Amazon repricing services. So some of the things are on the more complicated side. But I think it's always been amazing to me to just think about how many different things are done in the world that could be automated in some better way, or would just enable people to focus in on what they do well. AJ, you had mentioned about how, I think you brought up a really good point when you said that Ty would maybe not be a fan of automating the reporting cycle. And I think, if you correct me if I'm wrong, but I think why you said that was because of the fact that, like, without someone there to kind of interpret the results and think about what that report's trying to say, it kind of loses all of its meaning. So it's a good place for, it's a good candidate for over automation. And so, yeah, I think that it just takes a matter of looking at each thing and deciding whether or not it's something that you're contributing value that a computer otherwise couldn't. And reporting is a good example of one that, the person still plays a key role. But yeah, I just want to share those resources. I thought they were interesting.
Yeah, that's 100%. And kind of building off that point on the reporting cycle, I would be all for automating the actual getting the reports. I think it's the interpretation and the kind of thinking through what it means strategically is the part that I don't foresee you can easily automate. And but I think, in terms of automating the reporting cycle, I think we're like right on the verge of it. I mean, I think there's different folks who swear it can be totally done, and I still am on the fence with saying I don't see that it can be done entirely across the board for every company, because the problem being that the inputs are not standardized across small businesses. So in the small business world, automating the accounting and reporting cycle is still very difficult. And I'm sure as I say this, there's some wizard out there who's done it in their company who's going to kind of post a comment and say, I've done it, mine is 100% automated, and we close our books in 24 hours after month end through our highly automated process, and anyone could do this kind of thing. But I would beg to argue that point with the fact that the most popular commercial small business softwares still don't do that. So, if you've done it, you've done something that the rest of the commercial world hasn't quite figured out how to do. And so, yeah, if you can do it, great. is what I have to say about that.
I think maybe the more interesting question is what can't you automate away? I think it's probably I'll use an example. I worked at a call center, and the call center work was roadside assistance. So think like a AAA. If you broke down, you call for a tow truck, you would reach like a central call center, and they had a database of contracted tow trucks, and they would come out. You would schedule a tow truck on a preferred rate because they're supposed to be getting a lot of calls as your roadside assistance for all these different companies. And I don't think you could automate that process, because you have people that have been involved in an accident, and often you would have to have them call 911 because here they are with a broken leg or something on the side of the road calling roadside assistance. And I don't necessarily know you can program empathy or the own wherewithal to pick up your own cell phone and look up what the 911 dispatch is in Lexington, Kentucky, if somebody really needed the help. I don't know if a computer program could do that. And I think, bringing it back to accounting, I don't necessarily know that, talking about standardized inputs, everything's so different. I guess the inputs are so different. So you can be working with different currencies. Somebody delivers a bill that's in a different currency. Does the, automation process then figure out what the exchange rate is and put in an estimate and pay the bill immediately, or if you have to make conversions on your inventory from, packages to pounds, or from, cases to gross to individual products, the way that the information comes in. I think you're looking at a lot of different variables that are up in the air, and you might be able to take pieces of it and automate it. But I still think, especially with the interpreting results side, but also some of those inputs, I don't necessarily know you could automate it unless you took an extraordinary amount of time and an extraordinary amount of effort to automate the output of somebody else's data. I guess that's the best way to put it.
This is getting super nerdy, but to what you're talking about, when I say that dynamic and variable inputs are still a problem, I don't mean that I believe they'll always be a problem. I just mean they still are a problem currently. And I think the examples that you gave with the roadside assistance and everything, those are actually just different forms of the variable input dynamic scenario problems. And so I think, getting nerdy on it, what to appreciate is that there's a difference between the topic of automation and the topic of artificial intelligence. And so automation is something that we've been doing for a long time. And without AI, the path to automation is standardized inputs. But AI, that is the big problem that AI is going to solve for us, or at least that's what we believe it's going to solve for us, is that AI has the ability to learn and do what human being brains are able to do in terms of learn and take in all the variable and dynamic inputs that there can be. And I think that it's shocking. It would be shocking and scary to most people if you were to kind of talk to like the leading, or kind of read about some of the leading AI research in terms of what it actually is able to do already and what they believe it will be able to do. So I would not stake a bet against the ability to handle some of the scenarios that you talked about. All I would say about it is the hump that you have to overcome is AI. You have to have actual AI to do some of that stuff, and we don't have it yet. We think a lot of times we think we do, but what we really have is more rudimentary automation. We don't really have AI.
Yeah, and I wanted to be clear that I was talking about the automation portion, and not the AI portion. And yeah, good highlight though. Yes.
Yeah, and I saw just an interesting AI post on LinkedIn recently that was talking about how it's really interesting how we've done all these machine learning approaches and everything recently, but that this whole pandemic has changed all the inputs so much that anything that has been learned in the weeks before it was basically irrelevant. And so even when you try to implement these types of solutions, as the whole setup and as the situation changes, it doesn't know how to deal with that. And so I think there's never any full substitution for a person's personal interaction on an issue.